Welcome to the Mostly Pod Out at Night. Mostly, I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 88 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Last month, we explored the Wild West, and this week, we'll be exploring the Neo-Wild West. Movies that have a Western sensibility with a setting that's closer to a modern times. We have continued our trend of some big names on both sides of the camera, with a few award winners sprinkled on top in observance of the award seasons. So yeah, we did Westerns last time. We did Eyes of Fire. We did Ravenous and Bone Tomahawk. Yeah, all these are usually taking place in the time frame they're in, right? I don't know how far. Did they ever say how far Westworld actually was? Or was it still like actually the 70s?
I don't know. I mean, obviously the technology looks like the 70s. The outfits look like they're in the 70s, but it has to be in a future-ish world. It's like Star Wars, how like it's future
Right.
but still the 70s at the same time. It's the
Right.
same. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So we have Westworld from 1973, I believe, is 73.
Yeah.
Near Dark from 1988.
7, 8, something like that.
Yeah. And Vampire $, yeah. From 1999, 98,
98.
Yeah. So yeah, we were, across 3 decades, which seems to be our themes when we do stuff like this. It just happens to work out this way. So yeah, I'm excited. I know I had watched 2 of these for certain. I vaguely remember Near Dark. So we'll get into that. But let's start off with Westworld. Like I said, 1973, and it stars Josh Brolin's dad, James Brolin.
Right. He looks like just like him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, there's no way he could say that's not my dad. I mean, yeah,
right.
It looks like Josh Brolin wearing his 70s wig.
Oh, yes, easily. And the other guy looks familiar too.
Yeah, I looked him up. I don't know where else I would have known him from, but yeah.
Maybe just familiar because of his, his perm and his porno stash.
That's 1973. That was tame by 73 standards.
Yeah. So this movie was based off the book by Michael Crichton because he likes to write about amusement parks gone awry.
Also directed by Michael Crichton.
It was directed by him, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think this was the first movie that he actually directed himself. He had done a lot of screenplays and worked with other movie makers before, but this is the first one where he wrote and directed it himself.
Yeah. And I know I watched the first 2 seasons of the Westworld TV show. I
watched you watched all of them. Yeah. I'm going to say, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the first season was great. Second season was good. Diminishing returns past that point.
Right. And I only bring it up because I feel like Ben Barnes and Jamie Simpson's characters, I feel like are these main 2 guys that we follow.
Yeah, I think, and Spirit, I think that's who they're supposed to be, right?
Right. That's how I was referencing it. So anyway, it starts off essentially with a reporter who is reporting on Westworld, which also includes, is it Roman world and future world?
Well, it's Roman world, medieval world, and Westworld are the 3 worlds
that we see.
Well, that exist there. I mean, there may be another company or something that has another resort, or maybe they have another resort somewhere else, but in that location, at least this ad, which is, we only really see this location and ads for this place. Right. And this place is all 3 of them, and they're all interconnected.
Right.
Not like we could walk from one to the other, but like, they're in the same kind of geographical area.
Right. I just thought Future World just because I know that is the sequel to this.
That is the sequel that no one needs to watch.
That is very true.
It is fucking boring. It's not even really that bad. It's just boring.
Right. So anyway, reporter is interviewing people, and the woman clearly was part of a Roman orgy multiple times.
Okay,
which is
well, here's an interesting fact. I recently learned this. Okay, men, when they go for what they call sex tourism, right?
Mhm.
Where do they go? They go
Brothel.
to like Thailand,
Oh yeah.
right? You know, something like that, right? That's where they go. That's a place known for like sex times with weird sex stuff. Who knows?
Right.
Women, when women go for sex tourism, where do they go?
Uh, Italy.
Correct. So if you ever hear of a woman going on vacation to Italy by herself, you know why. You know what they're doing. So I think the Roman world is kind of filling in for that. You know what I'm saying? So like it seemed like the women were like going to the Roman world to have their own like lustful fun there. And then the men
Right.
were going to Westworld, the medieval world, to like live out their, gunfight and sword fight fantasy.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's how we just get exposition dump. We get people, like I said, kind of the same train ride that we get in the TV show of them going there. They kind of go on the shuttle. They say, "Hey, get off here." And it seems like that. I don't remember his name.
Who's
Is
name?
it Peter? Yeah, because James Brolin is John. It seems like he's been there before, and he's bringing his friend for the very first time.
Right.
And in 1973, $1,000 a day is how much this place cost.
Right, which is like that's like how much Disney World costs.
Right.
Well, I don't know how much Disney World costs. I'm just making it up, but I'm assuming it's very low priced. But in 1973, that was a lot of money.
Right. Right. And so it's really just the elitist, right, that go there and live out their fantasies. So anyway, we get to see their command center control room. They're talking about like what's really interesting is you and I know is that this was the first really mention of a computer virus is in this movie.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they don't even call it a virus.
No.
He's like, it's like a disease that affects computers, and you're like, yeah, like a virus, but they never actually say virus. He just said it's like a disease that it's infecting the computer. So, but yeah,
Right.
it's very much like I don't know if it's the very first, but it's the very first one that I know of a movie, talking about a computer virus or something affecting
Right.
technology in that way.
Right. So that's I find that always very interesting while watching this movie. Is just the idea of that was kind of penned by Michael Crichton or made popular by Michael Crichton.
Right.
So anyway, they're kind of go through the ropes. Like, hey, what happens? I can shoot this guy. Yeah. How do you know who they are? Well, you can tell by their hands, and they have really bright lights shining into their eyes. Every time we see their eyes gleaming, it's noticeable that they are androids. And they're there kind of just to do one thing. It is to live out your fantasies of that particular world that you are in. And they kind of show what happens. Like, oh, I can shoot this guy, and blood, squibs, all that stuff happens. But it's like, what happens if I use it on you? He's like, go ahead, shoot, and nothing happens because they are able to be sensed by heat signatures. Essentially, they said,
right. Yeah. Which it's kind of advanced for 73, but yes, that's what they say.
Yeah, so you're able to just kind of do whatever you want. So they start doing Western things, some shootouts. They go visit the brothel, and have sex with the android prostitutes.
Yeah, they're basically exploring the West as you would if you were like on a tourism trip to the Wild West, which is what they're doing.
Right. And we do cut to, we have, I'm going to call him, Professor Dopey, who wants to be the king of medieval world. And he's like, haha, I'm going to be the king. And we kind of, go back to him, which he seems to be comic relief, I feel.
Well, yeah, him and Dick Van Patten
right.
are the comic relief.
Yeah, for sure. So he's like, I'm gonna be king. I want to fight this, man in black or medieval knight, right? Oh, he has like something wrong with his left hearing. So like, all right, make sure to program that into him. Okay. What happened if they didn't? And we're just kind of going through this stuff, the man in black, which in the TV show is played by Ed Harris, and he's not an android, but I
Correct.
think his character is based off of him. You know, the gunslinger they call it.
Well, yeah, well, the TV show took a lot of the things that happened in the show and kind of turned them around just to kind of surprise you as to like what is going on and what's happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
So we kind of see the escapades go through the day, and when the guests are asleep, then the cleanup crew comes and they kind of reset everything. They take the androids back to the shop, kind of work on like, oh, this servo isn't working. Here, let's hide this wire in your hand as you're working on this android. So then we kind of see what that all looks like. Like I said, in the same thing as the TV show. And they reprogram the gunslinger. He bursts into the room, and I think Peter shoots him again. It's like, haha. And this time,
don't forget he's played by Yul Brynner.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
If you know who Yul Brynner is, a very classic guy.
Yeah.
The King and I.
Yes. as a white man, yes.
but most importantly, he was in the Magnificent Seven, which probably gave him the leg up to get this role, is my guess.
Yeah. So anyway, he shoots him dead, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to jail. You can't go around shooting people whenever you feel like." They just did the day before, so I'd be confused too.
Right? Yeah, I was just like, that's kind of lame.
Yeah. So anyway, he's like, "Oh, look, now I get to do a prison break with you out of the old timey West jailhouse." So they do that, and they're kind of just venturing out, into the Arizona desert, essentially, I feel like. And to the point where we're still seeing like the computer technicians working on things like, oh, things aren't kind of going okay. Oh, it's like what they said, 3 in every 1,000 or something like that. There's an error. And kind of like,
I think it was like 0.03% or something. It was like
a really stupid
ridiculously
small thing.
low percentage, and then but lately it's been rising.
Right, and they don't know really what's going on there, but they're still working on like, hey, should we close the park? It's like, no. Once again, big themes to Jurassic Park.
They don't. Well, we can't close it down completely because that'll do a panic. But we'll tell everybody they're overbooked, so they're not going to bring in anybody new.
Right,
but they're also not going to make the people inside go home.
Right,
genius plan.
Yes. So anyway, while that's going on there, James Brolin gets bit by a rattlesnake. He's like, it's not poisonous. No, it's just a robot. Cool. It's still going to hurt.
Well, it's still going to hurt. And also, like, you're not supposed to get hurt. That's the whole point of this resort. It's like an amusement park. You got hurt on a roller coaster. That's major. That's something that should never happen.
Right. And they bring the snake in and go, oh, something's really wrong here. Should we close it now? No.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Yeah. No, let's not. And then they all get locked in.
Right. It's actually, yeah. Well, the king trying to seduce a handmaid, and she's like, no, you're the king. And like, oh, the android's not to spurn any sexual advances. And they're like, oh shit. Now stuff starts really happening. Then they get locked in, essentially to where they can't open the door, and they're running out of oxygen. Because they decide, you know what? We are going to, the king fights the Black Knight and just gets his arm slashed and then gets impaled right into the gut. Like, turn off the power to everything. Because, they only had I think they said 2 to 12 hours of battery life if they turn off the power.
Right.
Yeah, so they had to turn off power, trying to reboot the system. You didn't say the magic word. Anyway, so they had James and the other guy had a bar fight. They woke up very, very drunk. And then oh man, the gunslinger showed up. He's like, oh, James was like, I got this one. And boom, he gets shot twice. He dead. Like, oh shit. And, so Peter starts running away and he's being chased by the gunslinger. We see the the highly advanced computer graphics that the androids see, right? Which is just very, very pixelated, maybe 20 by 20 pixels.
Yeah, but this is not also 1973.
Right.
So that's like peak technology at that time.
Right. Right. So anyway, he's being chased all over the fucking place. And he tries to outsmart him, loses his gun. He meets a technician, like, oh, yeah, this kind of sucks. You're on your own. Bye. He's like, no, I'm not. And then boom, he gets shot dead. Also being chased by the gunslinger. And yeah, we kind of see everything running amok. Everyone's getting killed in all the worlds. And we still have our now, I guess, hero or protagonist being chased down. And he has the most knowledgeable place of a park for someone for the first time. He just happens to know to go into Roman world and
Well,
knows this escape hatch exists.
well, he goes running back to the hallway that he came in on.
Yeah.
That was where the trams all left. You remember where their hover truck or whatever it was
Yeah.
dropped them all off, and they all got on their different trams and went the different directions. He went back there and then was like, well, shit, I don't, like, nothing is here. All the lights are off. I'm just going to pick a random direction. And so he ran towards Roman world.
Yeah. And he goes into the underground bunker, through the access handles that the panels the crew would use. And he finds kind of their little lab or workroom, right? He sees the data center, the server room. All the technicians there are dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's quick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the people don't suffocate that fast, especially in a room
No.
that size.
We'll get into that poor quality control of shutting off power kills all air.
Oh yeah. Why would that, like, it doesn't need to be airtight? Why would it be airtight?
Correct. So anyway, he realizes, I think he heard, how do you kill him? Visual stimuli and acid, I think the guy said.
Well, yeah, he said, yeah, he was like asking, like, how do you stop it?
Right.
He's like, you don't.
Right.
But he's like, I don't know. I mean, your best chance is probably, throwing acid into its eyes to disable its visual circuits. I think he said something like that.
I think I think it was acid, or essentially go daredevil on him and overstimulate the senses.
Well, I think he said use acid on his eyes.
Okay.
So, that's what he said.
That's very specific.
It is. That's what I was saying. Like, it was like not even foreshadowing. It's like just telling you what to do.
Yeah. So anyway, Peter goes and hides in the lab, and the gunslinger finds him, and he throws acid in his face. His face starts melting.
Right, and he throws it in his face, and then like his cheeks bubble up.
Yep.
That's it. His eyes are fine.
Yep. So anyway, he continues. He finds his way into a dungeon where a woman is screaming for help, and he frees her, like, oh my god, she's an android. He couldn't look at her hands while she's shackled up, or seeing her eyes. Anyway, the gunslinger shows up. He's very visually damaged, and he cannot see him because he's too close to the flame for the torches. So he's able to hide with his heat signature, essentially, with the fire. So anyway, he's able to trap him. He sets him on fire. He's on fire. He seems dead. But as he's rescuing the maiden, nope, he's still there, and he just goes out towards him and just falls over and dead.
Well, his face falls off.
Yes, his face does fall off.
You get to see inside of his face cavity.
All the wires and his speaker for a mouth. So anyway, so Peter 1, he's seemingly the only person that lived through the massacre. And yeah, that's about it. My first thoughts was I don't recall ever watching this growing up, because it's heavily sci-fi, but it is horror too, right? And it being from 73, by the time we got around to it, I don't think it was ever available like in any video stores. I never recall seeing this anywhere to rent.
I never rented it, but it was on cable a lot. Like, I think this movie might have the Beastmaster tied for the number of times it was played on cable television. Because I saw it a lot of times growing up, simply because it was, it's like I watched the Beastmaster. I've seen the Beastmaster like 100 times.
Right.
Do I like that movie? Not really. It's just because it's on all the time. It's on every channel all the time. I don't know if but maybe it was like an open source movie. I have no idea why it was played so much, but it was played all the time. And Westworld was like number 2. It was on all the time. I don't think I ever watched it all the way through until, I mean, maybe a decade ago. I mean, but I've seen the bits and pieces of it at 100 times, but I don't think I've ever watched it from beginning to end.
Right. I know I watched it in prepping for the Westworld TV show. That's why I know I sat down fully to watch it in its entirety. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was an interesting piece of cinema that seems to be largely forgotten until I think the TV show came out. And like I said, if being Michael Crichton, you do see a lot of inspiration in his story for Jurassic Park. The whole idea of the amusement park, being shut down and people start dying, people not wanting to do things, right? I think there's a big correlations between those two. But I think it was for its time, I don't know how many androids that look like humans existed before this. Like, robots were robots. You could tell they're robots in all science fiction ahead of this, I feel.
I mean, they've always been pushing that line. I mean, you look at Metropolis.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Metropolis was like, what, the 20s?
Right.
So, I mean, they've been pushing that line for a long time. As far as like modern age, sure. But I mean, as far as robots that look like humans, they've been kind of selling that for a while.
I mean, I think this is a gem, an unknown gem for the most part now, because I don't think most people know about this movie. What were your first thoughts seeing this?
I don't know. I was too young.
Rewatches.
I mean, yeah, the rewatches. It's interesting. Rewatching again, like seeing them describe a computer virus, but not even saying the word virus, which is also funny because Michael Crichton writes a lot about viruses and diseases too. You'd think he would at least said virus once, but no, he doesn't, which is interesting.
Right.
Yeah. But no, it's good. Yeah, I rewatched it. From front to back, like on purpose. I don't know. I think it was like a decade ago or something. Just because I was going through all movies that were considered like cyberpunk movies,
mm-hmm.
and I was because it's like my favorite genre, right?
Right.
So I was like going through and watching them. Like, I've seen this movie, but like it's been a while, and I don't know if I've ever seen like the whole thing straight through. So I sat down and watched it. And I know I rewatched it again fairly recently. Before this, I think it was like a couple years ago. It was during the pandemic.
Okay.
But yeah, it's one of those movies that I've seen a bazillion times. So, I mean, yeah, I like it. It's fun. I mean, there's things that I don't like about it. That's why it was always like it got to certain parts for me, and I was like, ugh, and I would just change the channel because I would just be so bored of seeing that stupid part. But the endings was always fun.
Yeah. I'll do my highlights first. I think it was, especially for this time period, I don't remember when the book was written, but I mean, it was a good foray into the science fiction and horror of it all, right?
I don't know if this one was a book. I think he just wrote it as a screenplay.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I thought he just wrote this as a screenplay.
Okay. The book was released with the film.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure this was a book. I thought I had it.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, it wasn't like a book that was written years before and then now it was produced. It was, like I said, I was pretty sure it was the movie came first.
Yeah. Like I said, I like the idea of being introduced to the computer virus. I really enjoy the futuristic world of it. We become so complacent, and I think it kind of is maybe a social commentary on America being obsessed with the Wild West. Because when my dad grew up, he was obsessed with the Wild West. That was all TV shows were about gunslingers, about the Wild West, and it's interesting to really bring in the sci-fi and horror aspect of America's love of the Wild West that only had happened 50, 60 years before that ended, right?
Right. Like you said, yeah,
Um,
it also falls into that cyberpunk genre as well, where it's like big ass corporation, right,
right,
charging you outrageous amounts of fucking money and then putting your life at unnecessary risk for their own profit.
right.
Right? Yeah, I mean, so there's definitely that cyberpunk aspect to it as well.
Yeah, and it almost feels social commentary on like Disney World or amusement parks that were becoming very popular at this time frame too. I know obviously they had them beforehand, but not like as bad. I mean, obviously safety probably was not a huge thing back then.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean,
Um,
if like Disney World was what Walt Disney wanted it to be,
it would have been this.
it would have very been closely related for sure.
You want animatronic automatons. He
Yeah.
really did.
Yeah, because like, dude, if you look at like the original plans for Disney
Hmm.
World, it's nuts. Like, it was supposed to be like a huge, like, it was supposed to be like way bigger than it is now, and
Right,
it was supposed to have like all this housing and like whole like neighborhoods and cities like built into it and shit. Like, it was nuts.
right. And I like that he's kind of jabbing at that at this point in time too.
Mhm.
I feel. Um, and for it being a Western sci-fi horror cyberpunk, the set pieces for the Westworld were pretty good. I, they looked like they would have been just the same thing on set of any Western at that time frame.
Well, I'm sure they could have just walked on any movie lot and
Oh,
was like, "Hey,
easily.
where's your Western town?" I'm sure because like everyone had one in the '70s.
Hmm.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. And like I said, I like the idea of the the androids and everything like that. And they kind of got rid of around the uncanny valley by saying, oh, if you look at their hands, you can tell they are different. And I think it's a good tell to have in there too, because it came to the point where guests were going, we don't know who's real and who's not.
Right. And that's an interesting wrinkle in this show, right? Is
Hmm.
that you really don't.
Right.
You
You have
really
no
don't know.
idea.
Well, they kind of go back and forth with that because they're like, oh, well, they can tell who you are by heat signatures. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me like the robots are just like cold metal?
Yes,
Like, all
because
you would
my
have to do is
computer
like
has,
shake their hand and you'd immediately know they were a fucking robot because they'd be freezing cold.
right.
So like,
Because
I don't
we
know
all
if you'd want
know
to go to a brothel with a bunch of freezing cold metal women. I don't know how fun that would
what,
be.
what
But
are you
that part, I was
saying?
just like, huh, I don't know. Yeah, that would be very easy to tell who's who then.
Yeah. Are you saying that things that run on their own power don't generate heat?
I'm just saying that should be like one of the first things that you do is like make them room temperature at least.
Ooh,
You know?
baby, you're ice cold. Ah, I'm stuck.
Right. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're looking good. Ah, ugh. You feel like a corpse. Like, that's
I
not
mean,
fun.
maybe, yeah.
I'm sure there's a small subsection of the humanity that would enjoy that. I myself am not into that.
All right.
And if you
Um,
might be, I don't wanna yuck your yum. You know what I'm saying? Whatever
yeah.
you're into, brother.
I said, and then seeing his Crichton's taking of this, with like drama strain with Jurassic Park and going forward, I just thought it was a good stepping stone for his career.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
well, your highlights.
I mean, I love when classic movies try to be high tech,
Hmm.
but they don't see beyond the technology of that day. So
Right.
like that's one of my favorite things is like the 70s, 60s, 70s, like, quote unquote future stuff. When they have like all these like switches and like
Yeah.
buttons and blinking lights and shit, and it looks old. And it probably looked old at that time. But yeah, but it's, I mean, immediately, like, I mean, in the '80s, it moved in a completely separate direction. But like at that time, they thought that's what the future was going to be, like Star Wars, right?
Right.
Like if you look at like the super high tech, like, bridge of a spaceship, it's just a bunch of switches and knobs, right? Which is like nowhere near what it looks like in real life. But I do love when they do that. It
Oh,
just, it's fun.
in the 80s, we did get computers that are able to answer questions for us.
Well,
Thanks to Jeff Goldblum.
God, that's the one thing. Like all these movies that have computers, it's just like, oh, let me just type in boop 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 boop. How do I stop the monster? And the computer just comes up with a paragraph answer, like it knows what you're saying. It's like it's a computer. It doesn't speak English.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Well, I always bitch about that every time they do that. At least they didn't do that in this movie.
Correct. They did not.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, the dawn of the computer virus, which we already talked about. that's cool and fun. And of course, the pixel vision, which is amazing because it's like worse. It's like Pong. I think it's worse than Pong.
Oh yeah, like I said, it's like 20 by 20. It's like, oh, he like sees him perfectly to get like the best shot ever. I'm like, I'm looking at his vision. I'm like, I don't know what the hell he's looking at.
Yeah, like this is worse than Custer's Revenge. How the hell do you see anything here?
Yeah. Any other highlights?
But that's what for my highlights.
Why don't you roll into your low points then?
All right. Low points is, the red paint blood, right? I thought we were past that in 1973. Were we not? Or were we coming up on it? But yeah, it's red paint blood, very cheap looking blood. And the one part that always, even when I was younger, just annoyed the shit out of me was the bar fight. The bar fight, like somehow it's dead center in the middle of the movie, right? There's already like some things leading up to this, like, ooh, there's going to be interesting kind of like fights and murders and stuff going on behind the scenes and shit. And then it just cuts to this bar fight that's literally like fucking Looney Tunes.
Oh, it has the same sound effects.
Yeah, it has like sound effects, like, like stupid shit like that. Like, how many bottles get smashed on heads? It's just like non-stop. It's like so fucking goofy, and everybody's like laughing and giggling and having a good time. It's like this, it just feels so out of place. It's like this should have been like 20 minutes, 30 minutes earlier in the movie. It should not be in this spot. I've always been pissed off with that. Like, if I was still watching it at that time, that's like almost always where I would change the channel. Like, I could never stand that bar fight. But yeah, the goofy sound effects and shit like that, it just really, really bothered me. And the other thing I wasn't a big fan of is the repetitive music, right? The music is like, they only have like one song and they just repeat it over and over again. Sometimes they speed it up, sometimes they slow it down, sometimes they like omit certain like instruments, but it's always the same song over and over and over again. And it hurts. It hurts my ears. That's it. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. The bar fight, it just seems silly, but obviously they found it to be necessary because if you're in this near future and you look back at Westerns, you go, there's always that fight scene.
Yeah, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been in the movie. I just feel like it should have been in the beginning.
Right.
Like that should have been like
first foray into the Wild West.
Right. That should have been like right before the brothel scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it should have, like, the bar fight and then they wake up with, the ladies of the night in their bed. That's how that scene should have gone. And instead they go like do different things for like 30 more minutes. We get a whole bunch of other backstory. What's going on? The park's starting to break down, blah, 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 blah. And then that fight scene happens 30 minutes later. Which is, it just feels very out of place. I'm not saying the scene should not be in the movie. I just feel like it should have been moved way earlier.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. That's why it's there. Also, turn off power makes you seal doors and turn off oxygen to the command center.
Right.
It needs to be run by humans. That's
right.
The dumbest design ever.
But okay, but like, let's say the size of that like control center was like the size of like a school gymnasium.
Yes.
Like, even if you airtight sealed the doors in a school gymnasium, like, you would have days of air. Like, you would not just die within 24 hours like that. That's not possible.
Right.
And then it was like nobody was even trying to open the doors. Like, this is 1973. Those doors are not held that tightly closed. You could have opened them. They have windows in them.
Right. Also, I don't know the reasoning that you need to lock the doors in a power outage.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It was
essentially like, oh, it's almost like a failsafe. You technicians better make this place stay up running, or we'll turn off power and you die.
Right. It was like it was like the PAX, right? They just like, oh, I guess we'll just lay down and go to sleep. We'll just lay down and go to sleep and just let ourselves die without even trying to live because I guess we have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bizarre. Very bizarre.
Yeah. That's probably what I got. So, our out of this week are guns that don't need reloading out of 10. Because none of these guns need reloading.
No. I mean, especially like they got bullets on their gun belts and shit, right? Like they should be reloading, but no, they just like, they kind of alluded that they run on batteries. Like, That's not how revolvers work.
Nanotechnology.
Yeah, like in the beginning, they spent a long time talking about how authentic the guns were and how the guns were all real, blah blah blah. Like, then how do they run out of fucking battery? Like, I don't understand.
Yes, because you do get the big flashing red light.
Right, I'm just like, huh?
So how many guns out of 10 that don't need reloading do you give this?
Um, I mean, yeah, there's things that I don't like about it, but it is. I mean, it is definitely a classic, right?
Yeah.
It's a movie that I've watched a bunch of times, and I wasn't upset that I watched it again, even though I've seen it I don't know how many times. So like, I mean, it has to at least get a 7. So 7. It gets a 7 guns that don't need reloading out of 10.
That's fair. I give it 7.5. For all the reasons that we said, it's not painful to watch. It's really not, other than the weird bar fight scene that just miscut into the movie. But no, it's always enjoyable every time I've watched it. And I said I don't see it on very many things that people talk about, and I think it should be. I think it should be discussed more.
It should be. I mean, yeah, the TV show was until they like basically killed themselves,
Right.
by having a couple of crap seasons. I mean, I thought it had a chance to redeem itself, but yeah, they didn't feel that it should. They just let it die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt it went out with a whimper, and it was disappointing because that first season was so good.
Yes. And the TV show really took this movie into the next logical progression.
Oh yeah, it literally took everything that was introduced in this movie and then just like dialed it up to like a crazy level. Obviously, it had, what the movie's an hour and a half, and they had they had 10 hours to tell like a lot longer version of the story. So
right,
yeah. So yeah, obviously the show has a lot more room to move around in. But I mean, the movie, for being only an hour and a half long, did make some great strides.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, why don't you lead us through Near Dark?
Near Dark, or what do they call it? Aliens 2, I think they called it. But anyway, it was filmed right after Aliens, and it has Lance Hendrickson, Bill Paxton, and I can't remember her name, Jeanette Goldstein.
Yes.
Who were, Vasquez, Hudson, and Bishop from Aliens, and they basically went from that movie to this movie. So they kind of call it Aliens 2 because they were basically all working together again. But anyway, and then we get it's the first appearance that I can think of the dude from Heroes, who was the politician. He was a Petrelli, wasn't he? Because his brother Peter was like the super fancy one. He was like the politician one. I don't remember what his power was. But anyway, he was in Heroes.
Okay, I never watched it, so.
Oh, well, not even the first season? First season was good. Nope. Rest of them's garbage. But anyway, yeah, so he was in Heroes. Anyway, so essentially we get kind of farm boy Caleb, right, in Oklahoma. So we're talking like heart of hillbilly country, literally wearing the cowboy hat and driving the pickup truck with the Canadian tuxedo and everything,
and the slow drawl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're in the heart of the South here. So anyway, he meets this girl in town who like appears to be lost and like kind of immediately falls for her. She's like very odd, but he's just like blinded by her looks, right? So he's like trying to like show her a good time, and she's just like, "Oh, come with me and enjoy the night." And he's just not getting it. He's just not understanding it. And they stay out really late, and it gets close to like dawn, so he has to like drive her home, right? And since she's like obsessed with getting home before the sun rises, right. And he's just about to get her home, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna get you all the way home until you give me a kiss," which is I mean, it's kind of like borderline sexual assault, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure like I'm not driving you home unless you kiss me. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a crime. But anyway, this is 1987, so I guess it wasn't that much of a crime back then. I don't know. But anyway, so she's like, okay, fine. So she goes to give him a kiss, and of course she's a fucking vampire, right? Like, we didn't see this coming. And she bites him. And in this world of vampires, because in every vampire movie, they all have different rules, right? Some
Yes.
of them are similar, but some of them are different. And this one, it seems like if you bite a person and don't kill them, they become a vampire. That's
Really quickly.
the rule. Yeah, that's like within a couple of days they become a vampire. So anyway, so she bites him and then runs away.
Yeah.
And essentially she runs back to her home, which is like a beat up like Winnebago. And then Lance Henriksen is kind of like her leader father character. Jeanette Goldstein is like the kind of mom character, I guess, or more like stepmom character, I would say. And then she's got like the older angry brother as Bill Paxton, like the weird creepy little brother of Homer. Anyway, so they're all like just a big pack of vampires. And so she tells them what happened, and they're like, oh shit, well, we can't let this guy live. Like, you bit him. Like, he knows about us. We have to, like, take care of this.
Right.
So Caleb is not doing well. Like, he
No.
is, like, suffering because he just got bit. He's not a vampire yet, but he, like, can't deal with the sun, right? So it's making him feel real, real sick. So he's, like, trying to limp home, and he's, like, I mean, this weird stutter step that he's doing. And then his dad and
we'll call it the final girl limp.
right, yeah, the final girl limp down the road like you're half dead, right? So his dad and his little sister see him limping across the field, and they're like, "Oh, what's wrong with Caleb?" And so then the Winnebago comes flying down the driveway, grabs him, abducts him, and then drives away. They call the cops. The cops, of course, show up like whatever they say, like 4 hours later. So they don't find them. So they hide in the Winnebago, and essentially they find out that they are a traveling group of vampires that kind of just like live this nomadic lifestyle so that they don't get caught. They don't stick around in one place. They just like feed in a place and then move on. Like feed and then move on. And they find out that he doesn't really become a full-on vampire. I think in their eyes, I think he does become a real vampire, but like in their eyes, he's not real unless he makes his first kill. That's like his kind of coming of age thing.
Right.
And so all the rest of the vampires are obviously kill because they're all, part of the same band, but he kind of refuses to kill. So they kind of give him a couple of like layups, right? Like, here's a person, go ahead and kill him. And he refuses. He won't do it.
No.
Right. So they're basically telling him like, okay, you got this time limit. Like, you got 2 days. If you don't make a kill within 2 days, we're going to kill you because you're too big of a liability. We can't, because he was like feeding, because he still had to eat. So he was feeding off of his little girlfriend. So she had to like eat double to feed him because he like wouldn't kill. So they're basically saying, if you got to make your own kills, you got to, feed yourself. Otherwise, we're gonna kill you because we can't afford to let you keep going. So, they eventually kind of bring him to this like hillbilly bar, and they basically just kill everyone in the bar. So like everybody takes like one person and just murders them viciously, and then drinks their blood in the bar. They give him a layup. Here you go. Kill this guy. Very super easy. Like, you barely have to do anything. You just have to do it. And of course he refuses. And the guy gets away. And the guy goes and tells the police. So then they go and try to hide in a hotel, which doesn't work out. But the police find them during the day, which of course they're vampires. Sun will kill them. So they can't do anything. So they're basically like they're having a gunfight in this hotel, with like all these, every time a bullet hole hits, like strands of sunlight come in and they're getting burned and stuff. And it's just a matter of time before they die. So Caleb decides that he's going to save them. So he runs out in a hail of gunfire. And since he's not totally a vampire yet, he's like getting burned by the sun, but he's not like bursting into flames like he should be because he's not quite 100% vampire yet.
Right.
So he gets their van. He literally drives it into the cabin that they're in. They all get in the van and they all get away. And so they're like, okay, well, you haven't made your kill yet, but you know what? You saved all of our lives. We'll give you get a stay of execution, right? Like,
right.
you're our buddy. So like they all kind of like, befriend him. Like even the big jerk Bill Paxton's character Severin, he gives him one of his spurs, which is like his favorite possession,
Yes.
to kind of thank him. So anyway, so they all basically go to this like hotel again where they're like, okay, you got to make your kill, we got to figure out what's going on. So Homer, who is, like I said, the little brother, but he's actually like an old man. Like he's
They
been,
call him
I
old
think
man, yeah.
I think he's the oldest vampire of all of them, but he looks like a boy because obviously when you become a
Yes.
vampire, you stop growing. So he's apparently like an old creepy pedophile in a little boy's body because he sees this little girl and it's like he's like love struck, right? And she's like 8. She's very, very young. So he brings her back to their hotel room to, quote unquote, watch TV in the middle of the night. Brings her in there, basically all the other vampires know what's going on. Like, oh, Homer found him, a good time, food / creepy love thing, right? So they're just kind of letting him
Yeah.
do his thing. Caleb comes in, that's his little sister. So he's like, oh shit, this is my little sister. And so Homer's like, no, she's mine, kind of like a Smeagol. So he so then Severin goes and gets the dad and brings him back in. And so again, Caleb kind of has a standoff with them. They're basically telling him like, you let us kill your family or you're out. And so he kind of like goes, okay, I guess I'm out, right? Like I can't let you kill my family. So he escapes with the family, and then they get away, right? So he gets back home. The dad, I don't know if he was just a ranch hand and somehow knew how to do blood transfusions in cows or something. I don't know what the fuck that was all about, but he's like, Dad, you ever done a transfusion on a person?
Instead of answering, he just does it.
Yeah, he just does it. So I don't know what happened there, but apparently like they're insinuating that he drained all of his vampire blood and then got like half of his dad's blood and it made him human again.
Yes.
So he became human again, and then of course they catch up to him, right? The vampires catch up to him. And his little girlfriend comes up to him and she's like, oh, oh, come back with us, we'll forgive you. You just got to come back. And then she's like, oh, you're human again. Like, ew, gross.
You're warm.
Yeah, like,
I want you cold like my androids.
like, ew, gross. So she like leaves and they basically, say, okay, we're going to have like a, an old fashioned, basically like a high noon shootout kind of thing. So they go to like the town that's nearest to them, which is like essentially a ghost town because there's nobody there. And so they basically have a big showdown. Severin, who's like obviously the biggest fighter, is like trying to fight him and he's kicking the shit out of him. So he gets in a truck and then runs Severin over with the truck, which of course doesn't kill him. No. But blowing up the truck with him on it does. So then you have Lance Henriksen, I think his character named Jesse, I think, or something.
Yeah.
So Jesse and Diamondback chase him down in like this old timey station wagon. And where he's kind of kidnapped his little girlfriend, right? So like anyway, Homer, the creepy pedophile old man in the little boy's body, he gets killed because he's trying to kidnap the little girl again. So he gets taken out. And anyway, so they're trying to get away. They're driving away. And of course, Jesse and Diamondback basically, I guess, sacrifice themselves trying to get vengeance by like just continuing to drive into the sun, trying to get them and just essentially kill themselves.
Yes.
And so they get into the sun and they catch fire and they die. And then they bring his girlfriend back to the farm. They do another transfusion with half of Caleb's blood this time, and then she becomes human again, and then they live happily ever after. The end.
The end. Yes.
Yeah. So first, geez, I saw this movie a long time ago. I don't know when. It wasn't like in the late 80s. I want to say it was in the 90s at some point. I think I was in high school at the time. I don't remember how it came up. I think it was just because I was I would try to watch movies that like all the characters from Aliens were in, all the
Uh-huh.
actors from Aliens were in, and because there was so many of them in this movie, I just naturally kind of gravitated towards it. So like, as soon as I got my own video card, video rental
Right.
card, I would like
Yeah.
go and be like, "Ooh, look, Bill Paxton. Ooh, look, Lance Henderson." And so I rented it, at that point, and watched it then. I've watched it here and there, since then. I do like this movie quite
Yeah. Um, I knew a lot, enough about this movie that it made me question, like, did I see this or not? Like, I know like every aspect of it, so I had to have watched it. I don't know if it's ever was in its full entirety. It could have been, but like I knew every beat of it, so I imagine I did at one point in time. Might have been when I was going through the vampire movies in preparation for Vampire Dollar Sign. Uh, um, but I mean, it is an interesting take on it, the vampire movie, and you can see that there was uh oh, what was that movie with William Dafoe where
bit.
they
Willem Dafoe,
William Dafoe, where they transferred his blood and he was no longer a vampire.
Daybreakers.
Yeah,
Daybreakers was in the '90s, brother.
I'm saying that it got that inspiration from.
Oh, I'm
this,
sure.
that-
I'm sure it
yeah,
did. Yeah.
that's what I was getting at. But yeah, I mean, treating vampirism as essentially a bloodborne disease isn't really commonplace in vampire movies, I'd say, overall, let alone being able to return from being a vampire.
Yeah. Again, it's every vampire world has its own rules, and that's the thing. You have
Right.
to like relearn the rules of this vampire universe every time you watch a vampire movie. Like it
Right. It's
really
whatever
is.
fits the narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Like in Blade, the vampires are different than like in Anne Rice's world.
Right.
Than different from. I mean, I don't even want to mention the Twilight world, but they're all different. They all have different rules. They all have different powers. It's one of those things. Like a lot of monsters is just like they're universal, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to explain it. That's just what they are. Like a zombie is a zombie is a zombie, no matter what country or place you're from. Sometimes they're like smarter or dumber, or sometimes they can like know how to do things,
Right.
but like, mostly they're the same. Like vampires are totally different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a cultural thing for the most
Correct.
part.
Yeah, totally.
But no, I mean it was good to watch this again. As a rewatch. I enjoy this movie. I just don't watch it a lot. But what are your highlights for this movie?
Highlights for me is the cast, obviously.
Mhm.
I mean specifically like the vampire cast. I mean, again, I didn't even realize that Caleb guy was the dude from Heroes until like I think the very recent time I watched it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's that dude. When I was younger, I had no idea who that dude was. Like that wasn't the dude I was watching the movie for.
Right.
But yeah, no, they cast the vampires. I thought they did a fantastic job. They were very cool. It looked like they worked well together.
Mhm.
Probably because they just came from another movie before that. And they'd already known, like how to work with each other and stuff. And it was, and it's just fun. I thought they did well together. I also thought they did a decent job of kind of like the kind of like becoming stages of a vampire, like
Right.
you're not quite there yet, but you're getting there. It's a thing that's not shown too much in vampire movies. Like it's usually just kind of like it's done and over with right away type thing. Or as well, we'll see in the next one where it's like they immediately become feral, like the second
Right.
they become a vampire. But
Right.
you don't really get to see that kind of long descent into becoming a vampire. Obviously, in this next movie, you do, but in a lot of vampire movies, you don't. It's just kind of like it either happens off screen or it happens fast. I guess there's quite a bit of them that do, but it's not commonly done.
Right.
But I thought they did it was a fun job with that, and they had the Cramps Fever playing in the background at the bar, which is not a song that you would hear at a hick bar. But I
No.
appreciated that it was there. They did have a bunch of hillbilly music playing, like country music playing. But yeah, at one point there was like, is that the Cramps? But yeah, it was. It was playing in the background, and I was just shocked. But it's always fun to see. So what about you?
For me, the practical effects of the different decays, especially when he was when Bill Paxton was being essentially slowly taken apart from the truck, got run over and like, oh, he's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the 80s, so it really wasn't, CG, but I thought it did really well. With everything, the vampirism, the blood, it was looked like blood. It
Yeah,
wasn't
I
red
also
paint.
like. Yeah, I liked how they would get burned like from the sun,
Yeah,
and then like within a few hours or the next day it would be healed, but their skin would still be like really sooty. Like
right.
you
They
could
have to
tell
take a shower. Yeah,
it was burnt, but like now it's just like it's healed, but it looks like ashes on their face. It was kind of cool.
yeah, yeah. Um, and you're talking about the different prisms, how that transformation, what that looks like. I would imagine, and maybe in this world, if he drank human blood right away, he would have turned a lot faster. Usually that's the case in some of these things. Like, oh, you're not really a vampire until you've had your first kill, right?
Right. But yeah, I
Or
mean, like
first bite of
he
human blood. Yeah,
was right. Like he was
yeah.
burned by sunlight. He was drinking her blood. He just
And he
wasn't
was
killing.
shot and not,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Like he
didn't
was.
die.
Yeah, he had all their powers. He essentially was one. I just don't think they accepted him as one because he wasn't doing what they all did.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know another place brought this up, but Bill Paxton's character, which has never brought attention, is he has sheriff's badges on his vest showing the number of cops he's killed, and it's never brought to mentioned in the movie.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's got badges all on his jacket, and if you look at his pants, he's
Mhm.
got like patches from like all these different cops, like like highway patrol
Yeah,
and like sheriff patches and stuff, like all down the sides of his legs. Yeah, for sure.
never mentioned though.
No, it is not. It's just a
that
cool flavor
that
thing.
that is a great costume design that is sadly never brought up, and I don't know why. 'Cause that makes it his character even more interesting, that he wears his literal kills as a badge of honor. You know,
Yeah, but it was interesting. Like we got to see like how each one of them kills, right?
right?
And that was like in Bill Paxton, he never like snuck up on somebody and like did the sneaky kill thing. Like he always was up in their face,
Yeah,
like trying to get them to attack him first so he could be justified in murdering them. And I think that's why he took so much pride in the kills that he did. Is like he felt like, he was in self-defense, even though he instigated everything. But people twist shit around.
yeah. Like I said, that is an awesome costume design that is not talked about enough.
I agree. Very much so.
And yes, the cast spectacular all across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I'll roll into my low points. Quote, when they were at the bungalows, the guy that they let go at the bar that Caleb did, right? The cops brought him to a fucking shootout. Like they brought the witness to where these dangerous people are, and then those shootouts happening right around. Literally, you're in the car he's in. Like, why would you bring the guy to hey, we saw you kill a bunch of guys. Here's the guy. Is that them? No, you don't do that. You like, there's what, 10 of them there?
Well, yeah, that's what
Ready for a
lineups
shootout?
are for. Like they should be behind a mirrored wall. Like you should not know who is pointing you out.
Jesus, like that is the dumbest thing. You know? That was flabbergasted to me. I'm not sure they've ever established that you could just get transferred blood and be okay. Like maybe Caleb, because he didn't technically drink human blood, so he wasn't fully turned. But May is questionable.
I don't. It's one of those things. Like we don't know how it works in this world, right? I mean, maybe
Right.
it is. You just need to have enough regular blood in your system to counteract the vampire blood. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, yeah. I think it's very unlikely. Yes, absolutely. It's very unlikely that you would be able to do that.
Right.
Just like in the one thing that bothers me about I'm sure we'll get there eventually is like 28 days later.
Mm-hmm.
Like thankfully they cut it out of the movie. But the
blood
original
transfusion.
yeah, the original ending was you had to transfuse the blood, but you had to take every drop of blood out of the body.
Yes.
which is fucking impossible. You cannot do that. Like, it
Correct.
made me angry, like thinking about it. Like, you can't do that. But thankfully,
No.
they cut that ending out.
Yeah. And that poor guy literally seeing everyone else get killed. He's literally just standing there like they were not paying any attention. He should have gotten the fuck out of there.
Yeah,
when
no
he could. Like he's just like, I guess I'm next.
It's like,
Like, you
beat
see
feet,
people
dude. Make tracks,
Right.
cheese it, go.
Yeah. And the trope is there's two ways of vampires for a nest, if you will. Either one, they are so undercover and low key that they don't want to be found. But this particular group goes, fuck it. We're causing all the havoc and burning everything down that we go to.
Well, okay, yeah, it's one of mine too. I'll just add to yours because it'll fit better here. Okay, right? I'm looking at the logic of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 6 of them.
Yes.
If they have to kill every day, like, we're factoring in probably some days you're not going to be able to find food, just the factor of it, right?
Yeah.
But still, we're talking like what, 1,800 people a year?
Yes.
That's 10% of all the murders that happen in the country. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no fucking way these people would be able to get away with that much murder. I don't care how much of a nomad you are. They will eventually fucking find you, especially if you're leaving these like fucking, explosions and burnt down bars and shit in your wake. Again, like, they fucked up and let one guy live just then. Like, how many other people have lived?
Right.
That they didn't know about, like, they're not super people. What if somebody was hiding in the back or hiding under a table or something? Like, you don't fucking know.
Right.
Like, there's no way in hell, like, just the logistics of that, you have to kill every night. Like, most vampire movies, they don't say you have to kill every day. They just say you have to kill to live. They don't give you a timeline. Like, if you had to kill, like, once a week or something, or once a month, whatever it is, that's more realistic than kill every night, especially if you travel in a fucking pack. There's no way that that wave of destruction is not going to be noticed by somebody.
Correct. That's stupid. And then, killed the bartender, didn't eat him. Like, you just wasted a person. He wasted food.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. Like, yeah, vampires do in movies is like they just like murder a person and then just go gulp, gulp, and then throw their body. Like how much blood does a human body hold?
10 pints.
Right. And like, you took like 2 gulps. Like, anybody who's had a pint of beer knows 2 gulps is not even 1 pint.
Correct.
Like, you wasted all of that blood. Like, all of those people could all feed from one person.
Yep.
So even if you needed to kill one person a day, okay, that's 300 compared to 1,800.
Right.
It's a hell of a better fucking deal. But I was thinking, I looked it up. I'm like, how many murders happen in the country in a year? It's something like 20,000. And I was like, holy shit. Like,
right.
It's a ridiculous number.
Yeah. And lastly, it really depends on the vampire lore, but usually if your clothes are still in the sun, you still burn up. You can't just put a jacket over you and be okay.
That's contested. Depends. Sometimes they have vampires that can wear, like a lot of SPF and survive. And sometimes they just cover, their skin as long as it's shaded and not in direct sunlight, they'll be fine. Again,
I'm not sure we count Blade as added to the vampire.
I'm just saying, it depends on the world. Some worlds are very strict with it. Some worlds are not.
Yeah. Also,
again, every vampire movie, you got to relearn the rules every time.
Right. Also, for people that are supposed to be gung-ho on survival, they sure kill themselves a lot.
Yeah, no shit.
Just at the end of the movie.
Right.
Revenge. Or you can just flee and never see the guy again.
Leave. No, let's burn ourselves trying to, I don't even, what were you going to do if you caught him? Hold on to him while you're on fire? I mean, what the fuck would you have done?
Right. Those are my little points. What about you?
Yeah, well, I said, number 1 was the logic for the body count, which we just went over. So I'm going to skip over that one. Yeah, like you said, the whole transfusion thing, I don't know if that's scientifically possible to do. And yeah, like you said, the sunlight, they seem to be pretty lax with the rules of the sunlight because when they were in that bungalow, there was a shit ton of bullet holes
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting touched by that sunlight, and they weren't like flaming up. I mean, they did have some scenes where they were. I guess it's kind of hard to like know where they all are at all times. It's not like they're actual vampires or anything, but
Right.
yeah, it was a little lax there. Man, Homer was creepy, dude. It was like you could just see. I mean, the kid, to his credit, did a fantastic job acting that out.
Yes.
Right, but you could really see in his eyes like he was hungry for that little girl. Like he was like, she's not going anywhere. She's staying here with me. Like he was like meant that shit. That was weird and dark. And again, like in relation to him, his fire effect at the end of the movie was atrociously bad. That I don't think it was CGI, because I don't think they had CGI at the time, but it was like they did that, we could tell when something else was on fire that wasn't him, and they just like put it over him in
reprojection
in
essentially.
Yeah, and it looked terrible. And I understand it's hard to find a child that you can light on fire for practical effects. I'm like, I bet you that's why they did that. I don't think a dwarf on fire would have quite made that work. So,
no.
Which I know they do a lot of times when they're doing things with children, is they use dwarves. But I mean, the way that it was shot, I don't think they could have. Like it was
right.
So I understand why they did it. I just think it still looked like shit.
Yeah.
So that's it from me.
That's it. All right. So number of guns that don't need no reloading out of 10. I enjoy this movie. I do. I think it is a good foray into this. It's kind of like the vampire craze that we got, like, right? My Best Friend's a Vampire, Lost Boys. We had that kind of resurgence, I'd say, in the mid to late 80s of vampires, Fright Night and all that stuff. I will give this 7.75 guns that don't need reloading out of 10. How about you?
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna interrupt you and ramble about one more thing. Do you know who directed this movie?
Crap, no.
Catherine Bigelow. Yes, award-winning Catherine Bigelow. That literally won Best Picture for The Hurt Locker.
Wow.
Made this movie. It's like, what? Like I never even looked at who did it before, but I was looking at this. I'm like, Catherine Bigelow, that? I was like, is it a different Catherine Bigelow? Nope, same one. She also made a shit ton of other movies. I just wanted to bring up that she also made Strange Days, which is also one of my very, very favorite movies.
Yeah.
And Point Break. Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze, like ultimate action movie, right? Yeah, that was
quite
her.
a range.
Right. That's what I was saying. I was like, wow, I did not know that until like this week. I had no idea. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up before I get my score. Anyway, I do like this movie a great deal. I like it a lot. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna go one higher than you. I'm gonna say 8.75. 8.75 guns that don't need reloading out of 10.
All right. You could have had the full one more if you run out of batteries.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. See, we got some award winners sprinkled in here. We have a Best Picture winner.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So last up, we have Vampires, which I think was 98.
Yeah, because
98.
I was working in the movie theater when this came out.
Okay.
And my girlfriend at the time was very, very into vampires. This was during the phase where I played a lot of Vampire the Masquerade.
Mm-hmm.
So we were both very into vampires. So a movie came out that had vampires in it. It was called Vampires. So yes, we went there, and I got to like bring her there for free because I was working there, so I got the elite VIP treatment. It was very nice. So it had to have been 98 because that was the year I worked at the movie theater.
There you go. All right. So I mean, we'll go through this fast because a lot of it is just them hunting nests, right?
Yeah.
It kind of starts off with that where we find the crew. We meet one of the lesser known Baldwins with James Woods.
Yeah, I think he's like fourth on the list.
I think so.
Because there's obviously Alec is number one. Then you got
Billy.
Then you got Steven.
Then
Daniel. I think he's the fourth one. He's the fourth well-known Baldwin.
Oh, for sure. But this is, John Carpenter's vampire $ vampires.
Right, which is funny because I remember the advertising for this movie heavily went into the vampires with the $ as the S, right?
Yes,
And the original short story that this is based on is vampires with the $. But like if you look at the title card now, no $,
correct.
which is odd. I don't know if they just changed it because it didn't fit or something, but I remember the ads for it clearly had the $ in it.
Yeah. So we start off, we get to meet the crew led with a lot of familiar faces. You're like, oh, I recognize that guy from something.
Yeah, like Bobby Elvis from Sons of Anarchy. Yeah,
Right. Or Mark Boone Jr.
yeah, that's Bobby Elvis.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
He ever knows who this guy is, right?
I
He's
know,
like, oh,
I
that
know
guy.
Mark Boone Jr., but Bobby Elvis is shorter, so I just call him Bobby Elvis.
Yeah. And special effects by the one and only Nicotero.
Yeah, I was gonna say Gregory. It wasn't Greg Nicotero, it was Gregory Nicotero. I'm like, did he go by Gregory? But yeah.
Yeah. I saw that name, like, oh, that's interesting. I looked him up. He's like done a lot of vampire stuff. So anyway, we meet this elite crew who goes into a nest, and they have different methods. They have metal spears, stakes, I guess, if you will,
With big flashlights on them.
with
For,
big flashlights,
for a reason. I don't quite
lots
know.
of guns
Yeah.
that do nothing.
Right.
And a crossbow that, depending on the scene, has a rope attached to it or not.
Right.
That he would spear the vampire, and then they'd call out to Baldwin. He'd drag him out into the sun. They'd burst into flames. And they state many times that you can either stake him through the heart or drag him to the sun. They stake a lot through the heart, and none of them ever die.
Right. I was like, these guys are professionals.
Yeah.
Like you're asking like a bunch of fucking drunken good old boys that you just like, here's some weapons that you don't know how to use.
Yeah.
Because they all act like a bunch of morons.
Yeah. Some of them wear like chainmail around their neck. Some don't, whether they want to get bit or not in the neck. So anyway, they dispatch of them with not much instance other than like, oh man, my gun's away, type stuff. They're like, oh man, there's the head vampire, right? That usually turns them all. They call them the masters in this.
Right. Like I said, every time you watch a vampire movie, they got all different rules. This one, sometimes they do the master, I don't want to say servant, but like the master kind of like soldier, worker bee, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, and then if those kind of vampires, if you kill the master, sometimes the regular people, the other ones go back to normal. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just die. Right. Again, it's totally a new world every time you watch a vampire movie. It's
yes. So anyway, they called the lesser vampires goons, which I've never heard that, but okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's sure. I guess that's something you could use to describe them.
Right. So they do job well done. They're a little bit worried about it, but they decide to have a party with drugs, alcohol, pizza, and hookers.
Hell yeah.
So like, oh, it's really bothering me about this master. Oh, hey there, hooker lady, you want to go to my room? Okay. And then lo and behold, the master vampire comes and just slaughters them all.
Yep.
Except for Baldwin and James Woods, and he bites the lady friend that James Woods had, and she slowly turns-ish throughout the rest of this movie.
Right. And this is another rule that sometimes applies and sometimes does not apply, is that sometimes when you get bit, you become a vampire. Sometimes you have to like go through the whole process of like, you drink all their blood, then they drink your blood, blah, blah, blah. And this one, it's apparently you just get bit and then you turn. But over that time, you become like telepathically connected to the master, which again sometimes applies, sometimes does not, always different rules, but in this one it applies. So
yes, and
that's why they bring her with, is they're going to try to
keep her alive
to find it,
because Valak.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, so like, oh shit, so he gets we find out they're like sanctioned by the Catholic Church,
right?
He goes to I think Cardinal is like, oh yeah, he knew my name. Like he knew my name. He knows me. Like who ratted me out, right? And so he goes there like, hey, I need a crew. Like, no, you need to take care of this. Don't go after him. Like, here's a picture of him. And like, what's that word mean? I mean, clearly the word is the same
Celebrate good times. Come on.
as the Latin for celebrate, which looks like celebrate. And I'm glad the other priest was there to explain to James what that it means celebrate. Essentially, this lore is an exorcism that was trying to be done. Like he was a priest that like rebelled in the 1300s, and the exorcism didn't finish, so he became a vampire.
Right. Yeah, they said like instead of doing an exorcism, they ended up doing a reverse exorcism,
Right.
which like brought a demon into him. I don't
Sure.
I was like, okay. I
Yeah.
guess.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's looking for this. You find out. I'll just say this part now. They're looking for a fabled black cross to complete the exorcism, so he's able to go out into the sunlight. That's the entire purpose of this. So anyway, they bring the woman back with Baldwin. He strips her naked, checks her out, and then they have commotion. She's trying to kill herself. He pulls her in. She drinks his blood, biting him as well. I mean, shit, he's gonna turn to vampire. Of course, he says nothing, as you do.
Yeah, of course. You're a vampire hunter who knows what's at stake.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're at this new hotel. James Gunn brings the new priest that's with them and treats him like absolute shit. First introduction is essentially beat the crap out of him, seeing why he's there because he knows all about him. Then ask him where he gets wood from it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, again at this point, since the master knew his name, he knows that someone talked.
Right.
Because the only people that know he's out hunting vampires is the church. So he knows that somebody at the church talked.
Right. And this guy knows way too much about him.
Right. And this guy's been saying, "Oh, I've been following you. I know all of your work." So he's like, "Okay, well, I don't know you. So you must be the guy who sold me out." So
right.
yeah, I understand.
Essentially we get this is the exposition dump part of the movie where James' parents were killed by vampires. He was raised by the Catholic Church to become like this ultimate vampire slayer.
Right. And he ended up being James Woods.
Right. They're
okay.
like, hey, I got this. We'll only copy this map that shows they're looking for something. It's a spear, it's a spiral and it's growing. He's looking for something. Oh, beats the shit out of him. Yeah, it's the Black Cross to do it. So anyway, they get there. Like, oh man, she's starting to have a psychic link. Oh, he's at this San Miguel and killed a bunch of people except for one priest. She's visionist. She's like, okay, we're gonna start hunting him down. So anyway, they're kind of going through that, and they go back to the church where the vision was. Like, oh, he took it because he was able to convince the last priest he left alive to lead his way there. Eventually, they get to Old Mission, I'd say.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a hidden Spanish mission, and like the guys are just like old timey monks.
Yeah, in the 1998.
Right.
So anyway, they're like, all right, well, we gotta do this. There's just two of us left. We're gonna take them out. And they conceive the worst possible plan I'd think ever in getting this, where they go, hey, you go down the elevator, you bring them up one at a time, and we'll have to pull them out manually. So they start staking people. And work. They get like two of them. One fine, second one barely.
Right.
Once again, they stab him multiple. Like at one point in time, the new priest just stakes him, like stabbing him to death with a stake, and he doesn't die.
Right. Yeah. It's a movie that doesn't follow its own vampire rules for sure.
No, for sure. So anyway, as they realize they got two vampires out, the sun is setting, and they get attacked. Val comes out and knocks James was unconscious. Baldwin starts to drive away. The priest hides himself, and look, the cardinal betrayed them. He's like, we're gonna finish this reverse exorcism so we can walk in the daylight. We need the blood of a hunter to do this.
Yeah, the blood of a crusader, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing was the cardinal betrayed them because he was old and he didn't want to die.
Yeah. When a man gets
that
my
was his
age,
reasoning.
Right. And Valak, in like the 2 days since they haven't seen him, build out a new army of like at least 15 goons.
Well, and they also said earlier that at least 7 of them were masters. So I don't know how masters are even made.
I
You
don't
know,
know.
again, they don't explain any of that to us. We only get bits and pieces. But like, here's the thing that I don't get. I mean, I'm just gonna touch on it now. I'll talk about it later. But like, this movie is one of those movies that were like, when you become a vampire, you instantly become feral.
And
Like,
claws.
right? And the only
yeah.
vampires that even talk is the one head dude, and he barely talks. He talks like an animal.
Yeah.
So like, the cardinal becomes a vampire, he would just become like an animal. So like, yeah, you wouldn't technically die, but you're like, that's what you want to be, an animal? Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you thinking? Like, it's not like he doesn't know. Like, he was the guy that was like the head of the vampire strike team. Like, he knows
Right.
exactly what vampires are. What the fuck is he thinking? Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
It's all right. So anyway, while Baldwin's driving away, she transforms, bites his neck, which he's able to stop the bleeding by going unconscious, waking up, firing a couple bullets, and putting the hot barrel onto his neck. So he makes his way back. He's saves James Woods after the other priest shoots the cardinal dead. He's like, all right, you have no one to do the reverse exorcism. He's like, I got you. We'll burn James Woods if you don't listen to us. And then they come in, big showdown. He impales Valak with James Woods impales Valak with the Black Cross, which doesn't seem to be doing too much, and he just shoulder charges a wood beam, and then he burns to death. And he tells his, Baldwin's like, oh, you got bit 2 days ago. Well, you gave me 2 days. I'll give you 2-day head start. Have fun with your new love that you have with this lady of the night, because you desperately love her now. Hey, Padre, let's go finish the rest of these goons. End the movie.
Yeah.
What were your first thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I don't remember so many logical loopholes in this film. I barely remember. I mean, I just remember James Woods being James Woods. That's about it. That's about all I remember from like when I was watching it. I did not like it enough to ever watch it again. This is literally the second time I've watched it. I watched it one time in 1998, and now I'm watching it again now. This is the second time I've seen it, even though I did see it in the theater the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not a great film. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie that it sets up its vampire rules, then doesn't follow them.
Mm-hmm.
And then like changes rules as it moves through the movie. I mean, it's like it's all over the place. Unfortunately, it's kind of like John Carpenter in his later years like stopped caring as much about the details. I think this is kind of like just a casualty of that. So there's a lot of details that don't make sense. But he still just kind of kept running with it and let it happen anyway.
Right. I know I saw this when it got released in the video store. Not that far after Dracula 2000 came out. You are in the same boat as most other people. I enjoy this movie despite its fallacy. I mean, I'll rip into it. Don't get me wrong. I've always enjoyed this movie just because it's so stupid and so cheesy.
Well, that's why you like it. That's why I don't like it.
Correct. I've watched this many, many times. So it's one of like a guilty pleasure movie of mine because I do think it's that stupid.
It is. It definitely is.
Yeah, I could probably told you what everything that happened beat for beat without watching it again this week. So that's probably the time since I've watched it. I'll go into my highlights. I mean, yeah, is James Wood James Wood? Yes. Does he do the character well? Yes.
Well, yeah, the character was made as James Woods, so yes, he played it well.
Yeah. Yes, he did. And it's it's hinted on a lot in a lot of movies that the Catholic Church sanctions these killings for things that are anti-Catholicism and Christianity. So I always enjoy that interesting spin on it. I find it interesting that they always had a priest in their crew. because you'd think vampirism would be an affront to God, and they wouldn't actually believe it.
Well, you'd also think there'd be a purpose, right?
Right.
Like maybe, like, because they said in this world the crosses don't affect vampires, right?
Or garlic is just
Right. Yeah.
doesn't
So
do
like the
anything.
typical things that you would use against vampire don't exist. So like, why would a priest be with them other than like just
Correct.
to supervise? Maybe like be the cardinal's eyes with them. I get that, but there's no
Yeah.
like tactical reason why the priest is with them.
No, there's not. But I still think it's interesting that it's still there.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it maybe in this world because exorcisms cause this, so therefore they are demonic, as you alluded to earlier. I mean, is the acting good? No. But are the special effects good for the kills? I think so. For the kills.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the effects and the blood work in this is pretty good. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna like when he was killing all the people in that party, like that was fun,
Yeah.
practical effects, blood splurting everywhere. Yeah, it was fun. It was like
You saw Nick Taro and his legacy of learning with Romero and Savini really shows in this movie.
Right.
Because I even think he did From Dusk Till Dawn with Savini.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, yeah, they did work together for quite a while.
Yeah. So I'm explicitly saying the blood and killing special effects. I'm leaving the other special effects to a later point of this conversation of the flame part. Yeah, like I said, it's just interesting, and it's just it is a unique take on the vampire world, which at that point in time, 100 years of vampire in literature and media, right? You got to do something different.
Right.
What about you? What are your highlights?
I only have two. One is like you said, James Woods. James Woods is James Woods, and this character was written as James Woods, so he did a great job being James Woods because that's the only character he can play is James Woods.
Right.
But I will say this, and I don't know why, but I was just like watching her act, and I'm like, wow, she is really good at convulsing.
She is
like Katrina, who is the lady of the night that gets bitten. She is probably the best convulsing actor I think I've ever seen. Like, she has it fucking mastered. She did a fantastic job with the weird shaking,
that's
convulsing.
half her stuff in this movie.
Right, yeah, that's like mainly what she does. But I was like, wow, she was great at that. I was just like amazed. Like every time she did, I'm like, that is awesome. Like you should have had more work.
Well, she was Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks.
I guess that makes sense. But yeah, no, that's it. So,
low points.
Okay, now most of these are just going to be like blatantly obvious logic holes that I just could not get my head around. The first one happens at the beginning of the movie, and I was just like, literally, I had to pause it and go, "What the fuck?" Because I was just like blown away. Like, what fucking idiot thought this scene up? Okay. They go up to the house that they now say is a nest, right? They're unpacking everything. Everybody's getting all fucking ready and shit, right? This guy walks up to the door, brings out this like thing. It looks like one of those things you cut glass with, right? Like a suction cup where you cut glass. He suctions it onto a wooden door, okay? And he goes with a little button, pulls it away. Now there's a fucking hole in the door. One, how the fuck did that happen, right? Two, what is the purpose of this hole? To stick your hand in the door to unlock it.
Yes.
Why would you not put the suction over the fucking lock on the door?
What? That's crazy.
What the fuck? I essentially had to pause it. I'm like, what the fuck? What idiot wrote this scene? I was just like dumbfounded. I was like, how could this get past a script writer, like a person filming this? Like, why would you ever stick your hand in a hole when you have the device to make another hole in your hand? Oh my God, I was so upset. I could not get over it. Anyway, so that was just like blew my mind for a long time. Anyway, now if you are funded by the Catholic Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of money. They have, support systems throughout the entire world, right? They have their hands in every culture on the planet. Now you're telling me that they could not get more people to help them? There's not another team of people. They don't have backups. They don't have like, the Catholic Church can't call in like SEAL Team fucking 6 or something. You know what I mean? Like they got no backup whatsoever. Nothing. They don't even have a support crew that can like clean up fucking bodies for them. Like,
Nope.
Like these guys are hired to kill and also clean up after vampires. Like that, again, does not make any sense to me at all. There's a lot of scenes where they say like, "Oh, we know God exists." Really? How? Like none of them knew about this guy that was like a priest that became a false exorcism. Like how did they know God existed? I understand like the whole point of the movie maybe saying, "Oh, we know he exists because of this exorcism and a demon," right? Which doesn't necessarily mean that God is real. Right? It just means that a demon in some shape or form is real. But again, they were saying at the party, like, yeah, we know God is real. Like, how? How do you know? You know vampires exist, true, but you have no idea where they came from or why or how.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't get that. The thing, James Wood cleans up the entire party by himself, right?
Yes.
And then puts everybody's head in a big bag.
Yep.
And drives out in the middle of nowhere and then buries the heads in like a ditch somewhere, right?
Yes.
Less than 12 hours later, the news broadcast said that, "Oh yeah, we found all the bodies and we found their heads buried a mile away." What? How would they
Only
have
a
found
mile
the
away.
heads that fast?
Well, but also only a mile away
Right.
in such a shallow grave.
It's like, but a mile away is a long way, especially if you're stopping at the random point on the side of the road and burying it in a fucking ditch. How the fuck would you find the heads from that place and know their heads from that place in less than 12 hours? There's no fucking way.
Correct.
Okay. The Catholic Church knows that this cross is that powerful, right? Every vampire on the fucking planet sole purpose is to find this thing. They know how dangerous they are. They have strike teams that they fund and train to kill vampires. Yet the place where they keep the fucking thing, they have no one that can protect them.
Yeah.
What? What sense does that make? They got monks with no training. Like, there's plenty of like warrior monks you could have used. I mean, at least something. They were just like, "Oh no, vampires is coming," and they just get slaughtered. Like,
well,
if you
they thought the lore of vampires was they couldn't go in the churches.
It's just like,
usually
what?
That's the case. Not in this movie. They go in the churches all the time.
Right. I was just like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, this is the most important thing you're hiding from the evil of the world, which is vampires, and you decided to give it to a bunch of like pacifist idiots wearing robes. What is wrong with you? Again, like you can lock it up in Fort Knox or something. I mean, something equivalent. I'm sure the Catholic Church has
Vatican.
Yeah, has like some kind of fucking vault that they can hide it in. Whatever, dude.
They definitely have a vault.
There's more, but I gave up after that. As you can see, that was about halfway through the movie, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. But I would say the most egregious one is that fucking cutting a hole in the door, dude. I was dumbfounded with how stupid that was. And then the other thing is the immediate feral. Like, if you get bitten and you become a vampire and then you lose all sense of yourself and you just go like you're hissing like a cat and shit, like what the fuck?
Yep.
So yeah, that again, why the hell would a cardinal want to be a hissing cat? Like, yeah, you live forever, but you're just an animal. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, I'll stop rambling now. You can go ahead.
Our favorite movie. No, no. I mean, I absolutely agree with you on everything you said. It still doesn't turn me from it. So
no, I'm not trying to steer you away from it. I'm just trying to show you how stupid some of this shit is.
I said, when they say a stake through the heart kills them, and you see them getting staked many times.
Yep.
Nothing happens to them.
Right, and they have these stakes specially made.
Correct.
So like they should be able to do the purpose, right? They've been fighting vampires for what, 700 years?
Yeah.
You'd think they'd know how to kill it.
Okay. Number 2, guns. They know guns do jack shit.
Yeah. Well, they do
Literally
stun
nothing.
him for a little bit.
But not enough.
No.
Not enough for guns with regular bullets to do anything.
Right.
Now, if they had special wood tip bullets, I can see that.
Or if it's, maybe silver hurts him in this world. We don't know.
Right. But just regular bullets, stupid. Like they always go jump in there, guns ablaze, and shoot them in the head, and it does nothing. They just dive in, shoot them in the head, and they go, okay, now what?
Right, yeah, it stuns them for a second, but then they never follow up. It's
Right.
like, okay, stun them with the shot to the head, and then stab them in the heart. That's how it's supposed to go. 1, 2.
Yeah. Their chainmail collars that they show purposely put on, like they remove the new priest's, a white tag from his collar, right? Put the chainmail on. Oh, they get one vampire. What's he immediately do? Removes it as he's being bait
Well, he was
to the
he was
next
hot.
rounds.
It's getting hot. Man.
Sure. Sure.
He's sweating.
Sure. That winch system, like if you watch the beginning of the movie, that chain or is not attached to the gun in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, no, my favorite part is also the fourth famous Baldwin grabs the thing with his bare hands. It's a metal steel cable.
It's sharp as fuck.
Yeah, he grabs it with his bare hand. Oh, it's not moving. He's wiggling around. I'm like, dude, if that thing starts moving, it's gonna tear right through your fingers.
Okay. The Baldwin wears a headset to know when to do the winch. He puts the headset on when there is no radios to communicate back. In the last one, he's wearing the headset to communicate. They're shouting at him. Why is he wearing the headset?
It's a force of habit. Every time he gets in the truck, he puts on the headset. So he just did it on.
Sure.
It's like an automatic
Sure.
action. He didn't realize he did it.
Sure. The fact that they didn't make goons so stupidly fast. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, James was only cut off the heads of his crew. He made sure they were not turning into vampires. All the ladies of the night, sure, leave them there. Maybe they'll turn into vampires.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, but
if you're gonna go through that methodology and cutting off the heads and essentially putting 2 shelves of dirt onto it, all of them, you make sure no one turns into a vampire.
Okay, well, again, this is the same guy that has a magic wood suction cutting hole thing and uses it to cut a hole lower in the door so he can reach in and unlock the door with his hand. Yeah, we're not dealing with full decks here.
Right. And here's the thing that makes me laugh about this movie is, how do you know the vampires turn into Spain? Sparklers from the elbows and then dummy explosion. Sparkles from the elbows, first and foremost. They're like the fountain, like the firework fountains, right?
Yeah, and then 2 jets of regular flame and 1 jet of pure red flame.
Right.
Every time.
And then boom, like dummy explosion. It's that fast.
Right.
I don't understand. Maybe it was the psychic link that made Baldwin fall so hard for this woman so fast. Like, oh man, she turned me into a vampire. Oh, she bit a chunk of my neck. I love her though.
Yeah, but every time he creepy gets trying to kiss on her and stuff, she's tied up.
Yeah, and he smacks her around.
It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what was different about his transformation that he still was it's like, oh, we still have vampire work to do. He just got done doing things like, I'm not a hunter no more. You could finish it, like what?
Right, okay, how about you wait?
Clearly in control of yourself.
But you wait 6 hours first.
Right. He's like, oh, I ain't a hunter no more. Like you came from this determination as you're killing vampires, already knowing that you're a vampire.
Well, especially considering they finally killed the master, right?
Yeah.
The master. And now they're going to let one go free? What? No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You have your chance to contain this whole thing. Why would you do that on purpose?
Yeah. I still enjoy this movie. So, how many guns that don't need no reloading out of 10 do you give this?
I don't know. That hole in the door, man. It blew my mind.
There's
I
a very
could
good
not.
chance this is going to be the biggest discrepancy we've had in the movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 4.5. 4.5
Okay.
guns that don't need reloading at a time.
Okay. Not as low as I thought you were going to go. Like I said, and this is where I'm torn. Of these three movies, I enjoy the crap out of Vampire a lot. I enjoy the other ones too, don't get me wrong, but I enjoy it more just because of its cheesy goodness. Does it make it a good movie? No. We all know I sometimes have shit taste in the movies.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. It's a good, this is like a turn your brain off vampire movie. Because you don't if you think about it, as we discussed, your brain will hurt from all the logical fallacies that exist in this movie.
Right. I said I had to give up halfway through, or else I was gonna drink myself into an early grave.
I will take that into account. So I will give it 7.4. Guns that don't need no reloading. Out of 10. I said I enjoy this movie a lot. The next two are atrocious. Second one stars John Bon Jovi, and the third one, no one came back to do. Nick Taro came back for the second one. Carpenter came back for the second one, and they both disowned the third one.
So, I never even knew there was more.
Oh,
I
don't
had
you
no
wait.
idea. I think, no, I want to say I did hear about the one with Bon Jovi in it.
Yes.
But I don't.
It was still John Carpenter.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I heard. There was another one that had Bon Jovi in it. And I think that was the only thing I heard. I never saw it. I don't even think I ever saw the poster for it. But
No,
I did hear of it.
Straight to DVD. Both of them. We'll get to them. Don't you worry.
Oh boy.
I know we may have to lump them in with the do them just their own separate one, because Dracula 3D or Dracula 2000 has its own set of trilogies too. So
dear God,
it'll be part of our vampire movies that suck.
Yay!
I know you're excited for your John Bon Jovi.
So excited.
All right. Anything else to add to this week's episode?
Nope.
All right. So, as we are waiting for Imaginary to come into the streaming world because it's gotten horrendous reviews, we are going to instead change directions and do a director spotlight for this month of Lucky McKee. Not a big name, but he's made some hard-hitting films that explore some dark side of humanity. So I believe they are May, The Woman, and Old Man.
Yeah. And yeah, The Woman is technically a sequel to another movie, but that movie is not done by the same person. It's not even an official sequel. It's just like based on it. It's bizarre. We'll talk about it.
Yes, I know. I've only seen May of these three.
I have seen May and The Woman. I have not seen Old Man. So that will be new for me, but I have seen May and The Woman. The Woman, be prepared. Your wife, do not make your wife watch that movie.
Okay.
Do not do it.
All right. Thank you for the warning. So she won't get mad at me.
Not for your wife.
All right. So I'm excited. It's always good to do these episodes where we do stuff that we've never seen, just because it's fresh and new to us, despite stuff being old. I think we've only gone back 50 years at this point in time for the most part.
We did Dracula.
That's true.
I mean, that's a one-off. I'm not saying we done a lot of in between, but we did go back to the 30s at least once.
That's true.
Oh, we should do Nosferatu. We'll go all the way back.
Oh, we're doing Nosferatu because we're going to do Nosferatu, Eggers, Nosferatu, and then Shadow of the Vampire.
And then we can say, we did 100 years of movies.
Exactly. It is going to be the 100 years of movies.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll even be the 100th episode.
Nice.
All right. Well, in the meantime, remember, we watch bad movies, so you don't have to. And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
Good night.